All right, you're welcome back and you're watching Safiya Breakfast Show. Let me remind you that you can follow this conversation by logging onto our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Safiya on TV Golden. Now, Nigerian political trajectory is indeed characterized with multifaceted challenges, as a matter of fact, and leadership possessive. But it is the level of administration and determination by different governors, presidents that have come and gone that may have set the pace and the center stage for anyone who is coming to create a political enigma and impact lives to the barest level. But what is it that has plunged Nigeria in the wood that we are yet to get out of it? Is it poor leadership styles, or is it the lack of sensitivity that connects to the reality on ground? But time shall tell whether or not Nigeria can still give birth to this crop of leaders that are emerging to change the narrative. Joining me now to further this conversation as well, share his insight as regard to what nugget are we going to use as a template for Nigeria's development. We have Dr. Victor Kwambuge. He's a senior legislative aide to Senator Amos Yohana, and of course he joins me now to further this conversation the more. Dr. Victor, good morning, and it's a pleasure to have you on Safiya Breakfast Show.
Thank you. Good morning, and I'm happy to be here.
Good. Now, I'd like to set a premise for this discussion by asking you, there are countries that even before now have indeed, or was rather, considered as third world countries, but today, these countries that were third world in consideration have now taken the center stage to the extent that they are now becoming tourist attraction site. Tell me, what could have been, the reason for this drastic change and development on these countries, or in these countries that were third world nations before now?
Thank you very much, and good morning once again. I agree. 1960, 1st of October, Nigeria attained independence. During that period, so many countries also emerged, talking about the Ghanas, talking about the Brazils, the Indians, etc. I am not even talking about countries like Malaysia and Singapore. I'm looking at those countries that were at par as far as the emergence of Nigeria was concerned. Now, as at that period, there was a documentary that so many people or so many commentators during that period actually predicted that people should watch out for Nigeria. As a matter of fact, they picked three countries. They picked Nigeria, they picked Brazil, and they picked India.
Correct.
And they said these are the three countries that people should watch out for in the next 30, 40, 50 years. Now, 60-something years down the line, where are we? We know, of course, that Brazil is the largest producer of sugar. Brazil is the largest producer of some other products that we can have, we can even see even in our country. What about India? India has gone very far in terms of technological advancement. India has gone far in terms of education. India has gone far in terms of ICT. Where are we today in Nigeria? We have a situation whereby we are trapped in a development quagmire, whereby what we see currently is the fact that people are on the streets protesting because they are hungry. People are crying, people are agitating. So that actually points at one thing. The difference between our own climb and other climes that I've mentioned earlier on is the fact that we have not been really very lucky with leadership, particularly at the national level. We have not been lucky because right from the independence period, you will agree with me that historically, we have not had the opportunity to have leaders that were prepared for leadership positions. The first Prime Minister of Nigeria, in the person of late Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, was actually preparing to represent Bauchi province and also the northern province at the parliament then before his mentor, Sir Ahmadu Bello, actually cajoled him into becoming the prime minister of the country in place of Sir Ahmadu Bello. The Second Republic, where we had Alhaji Shehu Shagari, history recorded that he was contesting to be a senator in Sokoto State before, the cabals actually cajoled him into contesting for the presidency of the country. In 1999, Olusegun Obasanjo was actually in prison. And one of the things that dominate the mind of a prisoner is, when do I regain my freedom, not leadership. So that period, some people felt that he was the best material to come and lead the country as president. And when he came out, he became president, and some people actually doubted his preparation towards leadership. 2007, late Umaru Musa Yar'Adua was actually, of course, battling with ill health. He was rounding up his tenure as governor of Katsina State, and that was how he. So, the point I'm trying to stress is the fact that leadership in Nigeria has actually been a problem. We have leaders that are not very much prepared for leadership, and they have actually been at the helm of affairs, and that has actually led us into this trap that we find ourselves.
All right. Now let's try to create a nexus between leadership and then political leadership, because you don't need to be a politician to be a leader. Of course, we've seen where people who are appointed as ministers, made a difference. They changed the narrative. But in terms of political leadership, do you think one of the reasons why we don't see these leadership qualities and prowess come into fore might not be unconnected to the fact that political parties do not have ideologies? Unlike what you see in other climes, like in the US now, Republicans have their own ideology. They stick to that ideology, and the Democrats, same, they stick to that ideology. And in Nigeria, I don't think any political party has ideology. Do you think that also might be a reason why we don't see that qualities of leadership, resonating with either a political party ideology?
So the political parties that we have in Nigeria, you recall your mind back again to the independence period when we had the Northern People's Congress, which came from a cultural association known as the Jamiar Mutanen Arewa. We had the Action Group, which came from the Egbe Omo Odudua, and we have the NCNC. These political parties were all regionally based, some of them with a lot of religious inclination. And this kind of wrong ideological base was inherited in the Second Republic when we had the NPN, we had the NPP, the GNPP, the PRP, and the UPN. And currently, in our current dispensation, the current political parties, we cannot really say that the ideology is missing, but we can say that there is a lack of proper synchronization of these ideologies. So whereby you have people that will join these political parties today, and because they could not get what they want, maybe during primary election, they find it very easy to just jump ship, cross carpet from one political party to the other. So we cannot really say the ideology is not there, but we can say two things. One, we can say there are wrong ideologies in so many political parties today, and secondly, we can say there is a lack of proper understanding and synchronization of these ideologies. So that is why we find ourselves where we are today.
All right. Now, in other side of leadership, of course, we've seen where some persons, made difference. Some persons were outstanding in their leadership styles, not necessarily because they were politicians. But I've also realized that such persons, who excel in leadership may have had mentorship before now. Now, I think we have a problem in mentorship. Is it in the US, before someone becomes a president? I read that Donald Trump so many years ago was prepared to become a president. Bill Clinton, same, was prepared to become a president. Now, these are mentorship skills that is endowed or impacted on supposedly someone that is, intending to become a president. Talk to me about level of mentorship and preparation of, a leader.
So talking about preparation, in the United States, like you rightly mentioned, Barack Obama became president, but 20 years prior, he actually wrote a book. In fact, he wrote books, The Audacity of Hope, Dreams from My Forefathers. And when you peruse through the pages of those books, you can see someone that is already preparing himself for leadership.
That's correct.
The same thing with Emmanuel Macron in France. at a very young age when he became president, you will see that 15 years prior, he actually addressed a lot of people, talking to them about what he intends to do. As a matter of fact, and so at some point, some people were taking him as a joker when he was talking to them about how he could become president. Franklin D. Roosevelt in the United States of America, right from his primary school days, always joke with his colleague that one day I will become your president, and he will tease him and what have you. The same with Jimmy Carter. In our own climb, you find this issue of coincidental leadership. Coincidental leadership in the sense that, like the example I gave you earlier on, somebody is contesting for something else, then some people will feel that no, you cannot be this, come and become this, and that actually affects the preparatory level first. Secondly, it affects the delivery, it affects the performance, because ab initio, this was not what you prepare yourself for, this was not what you planned for, but circumstances, one or two political arithmetics resulted into you coming into an office that you are not prepared for. So this mostly affects the delivery of leadership that we have in Nigeria. This affects adversely the ability of leaders to perform optimally. But be that as it may, I am happy that our democracy is evolving. I'm happy that we now have some good leadership. We have some good leaders. Earlier on, I know you introduced me as the senior legislative aide to the senator. Maybe you may think that I'm a little bit selfish, but I will tell you that the principle under which I work, Reverend Amos Yohana, is actually one example of those kind of leaders that were actually prepared for leadership, that prepared himself for governance, especially at the upper chamber of the representation. Here at the state level, we have the Ahmadu Umaru Fintiri, that because of the laudable transformative agenda that he has pushed in Adamawa State, you have a situation whereby you can now point out confidently, without fear of any contradiction, that these people are actually well prepared for leadership, and these are people that when given higher opportunities, they can be able to deliver public goods. But I agree with your submissions earlier.
But I also, assume that since we have training institutes in Nigeria like NIPS, the one in Plateau State, it trains and molds the minds of Nigerians, to assume leadership position and become very positive in their dispositions as leaders. But is it also out of place to say that some of our leaders need to be schooled, in this regard? I know that sometimes, the provisions of the Constitution of this country are said, okay, before you become a governor, what is needed of you is just primary school certificate, whether you could read and write. In terms of literacy and education qualification, does it add up, to molding the decision-making prowess and the leadership style of the person?
Yes, so recruitment in leadership is one of the problems we have as far as the country is concerned. The Constitution is not helping us. The Constitution states, like you said, primary school is equivalence. A school certificate is equivalence. I don't know how they put it. So at the end of the day, you find a situation whereby the qualification into leadership position is being hugely compromised. And apart from the fact that it's hugely compromised, it affects the quality of people that we attract in to become leaders at so many levels of the country. In so many countries, you find a situation whereby before you become president, before you become governor, before you become senator or member House of Representatives in those climes, there is a leadership college that you have to undergo. There are institutions, there are institutes that you have to go, and you will be properly schooled to become good leaders. And when you become properly schooled, you get schooled in terms of emotional intelligence, you get schooled in terms of effective communication, you become schooled in terms of development of strategy, policy making and analysis, etc. But here in our own climb, these things are mostly not there. We have the institutions, like you said, you mentioned NIPS, you mentioned some institutes in the country, and there are so many of those kind of colleges. Like at the National Assembly, they have what they call the National Institute of Legislative Studies, NLIDs, and these are institutes that, under normal circumstances, they should be able to prepare people to mold them into becoming good leadership. We don't utilize those kind of opportunities, and that is why in leadership today, anything goes. All right.
Now, let's talk to the current reality in the country, talking about the ongoing hashtag and bad governance protests that are swept across, some part of the country. Now, this insinuation had been there before 1st August, and expectedly, the government of the day should have addressed Nigerians even before last Sunday's national broadcast. What do you make of the sensitivity of leaders, the inaptitudeness of governments to the plight of the general or greater majority of Nigerians that are displeased over certain policies of the government?
First and foremost, I would like to make this clear, bold assertion that there is some level of disconnect between the government at the center and the people. And in many cases, we say that when you deny people an opportunity to participate in politics conventionally, the people will find a way of participating unconventionally. Now, because the youths, the young people that constitutes the vast majority of the populace of this country, of the demography of this country, they have been a little bit, will I say a little bit, hugely disconnected from the politics and governance of the country. And that is the reason why when indicators have failed, poverty level, inflation rate, unemployment rate, food inflation, etc., when these kind of things actually hit the negative, the people will definitely revolt. The people will come and assert their voices and say, this is unacceptable and this is what we are not going to accept. And having said this, you will also note that these things have been coming. When the fuel subsidy was removed abruptly last year, when the current administration actually came on board, you find a situation whereby so many people actually predicted that there is going to be a lot of consequences as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy. Expectedly, we saw food prices going at astronomical level. We saw, petroleum products that we hugely depend on, becoming scarce, not just scarce, but the prices actually doubling, tripling, or even quadrupling. So at the end of the day, you find a situation whereby the people who are at the receiving end actually felt the brunt of this hardship, and that is what actually brought about what they call the hunger protest. It is very embarrassing for a country like Nigeria that is boasts as the 6th largest producer of crude oil at the international market, the largest, the most populous black nation on earth, the country that is very much promising in the 1960s, that people are even comparing us with countries like India and Brazil, Indonesia, but today we are very much backward in terms of all indices of development. And because of that, you can see the repercussion. Some people tagged us as the poverty capital in the world, and now you can even see that the major indicators that people are actually hungry, that people are actually poor, is the fact that people are coming on the street in the name of what they call hunger protest. This is very embarrassing for a big country like Nigeria.
But will you say, rather, that one of the reasons why Nigeria has come to this level of protest, and the expression, of course, may be germane, but how has corruption, frustrated the deliberate decision of leaders, to connect to the people? Because in connecting to the people, I want to believe the president doesn't need to come down to your neighborhood and meet you in person, but the policies, should be felt, trickled down to the common man on the street. But has corruption indeed, undermined this connection?
So it depends on what you call corruption. It depends on how you define it. But for me, I actually see that disconnect coming from the angle, like you mentioned, policy making, and the inability of these policies to be well articulated, the inability of the policy implementers to ensure that these policies actually trickle down to the common man at the grassroots, and to also ensure that these policies actually have a lot of impact on the people. And because of the fact that we have so many policies in Nigeria, so many policies, from independence period till date, there are chains and series of policies that has been initiated by successive government. Policies on poverty reduction, policies on unemployment, policies on women empowerment, policies on so many aspects of our national life. But at the end of the day, when you look at the results that these policies actually yielded, you will see that there is much that is left to be desired. There is much to be desired. So because of that, you see that some people have actually, because of their actions and inactions, if that is what you call corruption, and I agree, because of their actions and inactions, have actually defaulted in terms of ensuring that these policies actually yield the desired results that they're supposed to yield. And it is because of that that we find ourselves where we are. With the kind of policies that has been initiated in Nigeria from independence period till date, we should have no business with hunger. That's as far as Nigeria is concerned. We should be a production-based economy. We should be a country that should be that should be able to create jobs for people, rather than people just depending on the government to give them jobs all the time. With the kind of policies we have, we should be able to have a country that is so prosperous to the extent that other people, other nations should be copying from our development model. But what we have today, the policies are there, but the implementation is completely faulty.
Now, since independence, we have had different leaders of this country, military regime, and then interrupted, or a civilian regime interrupted by the military as a result of coup d'etat. But nonetheless, do you think Nigeria missed out in terms of having a national agenda, progressively and prospectively a national agenda, just like, for instance, now in developed climes, for the US, for example, you hear America first. America, whether it is a Republican that is a president or a Democrat that is a president, but there is a kind of a connection and that propels every leader towards achieving that national agenda. What do we want to achieve, in the year 2050? What do we want to achieve in the year 2060? We used to have what is known as Vision 2020 before it became Vision 2030. What do you make of continuity in terms of national agenda?
Everything, I think, boils down to the fact that if there is one thing that is needed very badly as far as the development of this country is concerned, is this issue of mental reorientation. Mental reorientation from leadership, number one, and secondly to the followership. Let me talk about leadership. Mental reorientation, because the leaders of the country need to be more patriotic. The leaders of the country need to be more nationalistic in their thinking. Being more patriotic means that you should be able to be angry when the indicators of development of Nigeria is actually going down. You should be angry when the issue of poverty is going up. You should be angry when there are more people on the streets protesting that they are hungry. So patriotism here, nationalism here means that you should love your country first. You should put your country first in everything that you do. On the part of the followership, people should be able to start conquering this issue of ethnocentrism on their mind, whereby you ask an average Nigerian on the streets, who are you? Where are you from? The tendency of the person start linking himself with his ethnic group, with his religious group is higher. Hardly will you see somebody calling himself as a Nigerian first and foremost. When you go to other countries like Rwanda, you go to countries like the United States, like you mentioned, they will tell you, ask somebody, who are you? The person will tell you, I'm an American.
That's correct.
The person will tell you, I'm a Rwandese. I am this, I'm that. But at the end of the day, in Nigeria, you ask somebody, the person will first mention his ethnic group before thinking about Nigeria. So that is why I said, if we are serious about this developmental drive that we always clamor for, we must be able to inject this mental reorientation, whereby people will start seeing themselves as Nigeria, and people will start putting Nigeria first, and people will start loving Nigeria to make sure that, okay, it's not about putting up Vision 2030, Vision 20 this, Vision 20 that. From my childhood, I've been hearing about it. I don't know what they mean actually. But at the same time, if these things will make meaning to people like us, we must start seeing that, okay, we have this mental reorientation whereby people will start thinking about how to project this country first. People should be angry that, okay, other countries are ahead in terms of development. Other countries are ahead in terms of all indicators of HDI, Human Development Index. And this should be a very big concern to the people at the helm of affairs, to the policy makers, and to the policy implementers.
Interesting. All right, we're about rounding up, but of course there is also another myopic understanding in terms of the status of one's office as a leader. Some persons feel, okay, he's just a councillor, so how can he be an effective leader? But leadership trickles down, to the to the minimal level of occupation that one has. You just poured the comiums to write Honorable Modufintiri for his structural drive as well as his leadership style in Adamawa State. But we can still go deeper than that, to the local government chairman who would now enjoy autonomy. How should they improve upon their leadership style at the grassroots? Because these are the ones that are closer to the people.
Thank you. Leadership is the responsibility. It's not a function of position.
That's correct.
There are people that, I think you have mentioned that earlier on, there are people that without holding any political office, they always exhibit leadership anywhere they find themselves. And that is why a scholar called Max Weber actually categorized 3 types of authority. He called one type of authority called traditional authorities, people that were recognized by their traditional institutions, and there are people that he called charismatic authority, and these are leaders that even without any kind of portfolio, they always exhibit leadership. Local government autonomy, I think I mentioned that in one forum this morning, and I told them that autonomy does not imply an opportunity for because you have so many resources at your disposal, you can just do and undo. Autonomy actually implies more accountability and more transparency in managing public funds. So one thing I will actually push and advocate is the fact that now that there is local government autonomy, resources is going to be more. It simply means that we should be able to see accelerated development at the grassroots. We should be able to see that local government chairmen, local government councillors, whatsoever position you occupy, be it at the federal level, at the state level, or at the local government level, you should be a vanguard of promoting sustainable development in your respective domain. You should be an advocate of ensuring that the people enjoy the dividends of democracy at your place. You should be someone that should be able to drive and pilot the agenda for real development, not just something that is at the local government level. They are people that expected, we assume that they understand the felt needs of the people at the grassroots better than everyone. So we expect that now that they have more resources at their disposal, please, they should be able to push the agenda for development. Otherwise, they will make complete nonsense of this thing called local government autonomy. Local government autonomy will only make meaning to so many people when we start seeing that there is high level of development now coming up at the grassroots, and that is when we can clearly celebrate. Next year, by this time, we'll be able to look back and say to what extent has this local government autonomy led to the sustainable development of people at the grassroots.
Because for me, a measuring yardstick for a developed state, is the intricacies are involved in local government development, because I think that is the indices you could see that a state is indeed developing. Exactly. Well, there's no better way to end this conversation than now for time constraints. Just have to end this conversation. However, thank you so very much, Dr. Victor Kwambuge, social commentator and development expert. Appreciate you, Senior Legislative Aide to Senator Amos Yohana. Thank you once again. I hope to see more of you again.
Thank you, Chris, and I would also particularly like to commend GoTel Communications for your consistency in ensuring that you always push public enlightenment, mass education. You are doing a great job, and I like to really salute your courage.
Thank you.
In spite of all the economic hardship, the downturn, it has not deterred your focus and your passion for ensuring that Adamawa State actually get the best in terms of journalism. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. All right, that's the conversation for now. We'll take a short break. When we return, Safiya Breakfast Show returns in just a moment. Join us again.